Her name was Charmian. It means delight in Greek. She spent her entire life inside the most glamorous palace on earth, surrounded by gold, silk, perfume, and power. She served the most famous woman who ever lived. And when that woman decided she needed to find the perfect way to die, Charmian became part of the experiment, not as the scientist, as the test subject. This is her story. Let's start with where Charmian woke up every morning. Alexandria, Egypt, 40 BC. The palace of Cleopatra VII, Queen of Egypt, descendant of pharaohs, ruler of the richest kingdom in the ancient world. From the outside, it looked like paradise. Marble floors, golden ceilings, gardens with fountains, the smell of frankincense drifting through every corridor, servants dressed in fine linen, musicians playing in the halls, feasts that would make Roman emperors weep with envy. Charmian lived inside all of this. And yet, she could not leave. She had been placed in Cleopatra's service. Not hired, not invited, placed. Her life, her time, her body, her future, all of it belonged to the queen. That was not a metaphor. That was Roman and Egyptian law in 40 BC. She dressed Cleopatra every morning, applied the famous black coal to the queen's eyes with a steady hand, because if her hand trembled, there were consequences. She arranged Cleopatra's hair, adjusted her jewelry, held mirrors, fetched oils, prepared baths infused with specific flowers chosen by the queen herself. She stood for hours, invisible, motionless, while Cleopatra held court with Julius Caesar, with Mark Antony, with senators, generals, and kings. She was not allowed to speak unless spoken to. She was not allowed to sit in the queen's presence. She was not allowed to eat until the queen had eaten. She did not have days off. She did not have private hours. She slept just outside Cleopatra's chamber in case she was needed in the night. From the outside, it looked like privilege. From the inside, it felt like a very beautiful cage. Now let's talk about the part of Cleopatra's personality that the history books tend to skim past. The queen had a hobby: poisons. Not in a casual way, not in a she read a book about it way. Cleopatra was obsessed with toxicology in the way that some people are obsessed with painting or music. Except her medium was death. Ancient historians, including Plutarch himself, recorded that she assembled a personal collection of the most deadly substances known to the ancient world: hemlock, aconitine, opium, viper venom, cobra venom, various plant extracts whose names have been lost to history. She wanted to understand them. She wanted to know how they worked, how fast, how painfully, what the body did when it was dying from each one, and she needed subjects to test them on. This is where it gets very dark. According to Plutarch and other ancient sources, Cleopatra tested tinctures on unlucky subjects and slaves, recording their symptoms and torturous deaths. Ripley's Believe It or Not. Think about that for a moment. Some woman was brought into a room in the Palace of Alexandria. She was given something to drink or eat, and then Cleopatra watched, with a stylus and a tablet, like a scientist taking notes, recording exactly how long it took, exactly what the body did, exactly how much pain was visible on the face of the dying woman. For science, for Cleopatra's personal research. And then another woman was brought in, and another. Deciding that the fast poisons were too painful, and the least painful were too slow, she apparently turned to animal venoms. Each test was a search for the perfect death, not for her victims, for herself. Cleopatra was terrified of being captured by Rome and paraded through the streets in a triumph, the ultimate humiliation for a queen. She wanted to know, in advance, how she would end her own life if it came to that. So, she ran her experiments, and the women who were brought in to be her experiments never came out. Charmian served in Cleopatra's inner circle, which means she was there. She did not participate in the experiments, but she was close enough to know what was happening, close enough to hear the sounds coming from the rooms where the tests were conducted, close enough to see the bodies being carried out afterward. And she could not say a word, not to protest, not to object, not to warn the women who were brought in, because a servant who questioned the queen's decisions did not remain a servant for long. She had to arrange Cleopatra's hair perfectly the morning after an experiment. She had to apply the queen's kohl with a steady hand while knowing what had happened the night before. She had to stand in the perfumed halls of the most beautiful palace in the world and keep her face completely still, because that was her job, and she was very good at it. But it was not the worst thing Charmian would experience in service to the queen. That was still coming. It is 30 BC. Charmian has now served Cleopatra for years. She has watched Julius Caesar come and go. She has watched Mark Antony become the queen's partner, her co-ruler, her last hope. She has watched wars begin and end. She has watched Cleopatra fight Rome with everything she had: politics, charm, strategy, alliances, her own body. And now she is watching it all collapse. Octavian, the future Emperor Augustus, has defeated Antony's fleet. His army is marching toward Alexandria. Antony is dead. He stabbed himself after being falsely told that Cleopatra had already died, a message that, historians suspect, Cleopatra herself may have sent to force his hand. The queen is trapped, and Charmian is trapped with her. Octavian made Cleopatra a prisoner inside her own palace. He kept her alive because he wanted to display her in Rome, to parade the Queen of Egypt through the streets in chains, as a trophy of his conquest. Cleopatra told him bluntly, "I will not be led in a triumph." She meant it. And when a spy inside the palace told her that Octavian planned to move her and her children to Rome in 3 days, she made her decision. She called for Charmian and Eros, her 2 most trusted servants, and she told them what was going to happen. On the 12th of August, 30 BC, Cleopatra bathed. She put on her finest robes and every piece of royal jewelry she owned. She ate a last meal. She wrote a letter to Octavian requesting that she be buried beside Mark Antony. Then she sealed the doors. Inside the room, Cleopatra, Charmian, Eros, 3 women. What happened next, ancient historians recorded in detail. A basket of figs was smuggled into the room, or perhaps a hidden box of poison. The exact method has been debated for 2,000 years. What is not debated is the outcome. Octavian's guards broke down the doors shortly after. They found Cleopatra dead on her golden bed, dressed in full royal ornaments, as if she had simply fallen asleep in glory. At her feet lay Eros, dying, and Charmian, barely able to stand, already fading, was still adjusting the diadem on Cleopatra's head, straightening the crown, making sure her queen looked perfect, even in her own final moments, even as the poison was already in her blood. One of Octavian's men looked at her and demanded angrily, "Was this well done of your lady, Charmian?" "Extremely well," she answered, and as became the descendant of so many kings, and then she fell, dead before she hit the floor. Charmian chose to die with Cleopatra. History has always told that story as loyalty, as devotion, as the ultimate act of service. But think about what it actually means. She had lived her entire life inside that palace. She had never chosen where to go, what to do, what to eat, who to speak to. She had watched women die in poison experiments that had nothing to do with her, and everything to do with her mistress's obsession. And at the very end, in the one moment that was entirely her own, she chose to die in that room rather than face what came next. Was that love? Or was it the simple, devastating truth that after a lifetime of belonging to someone else, she simply had no idea how to belong to herself? We will never know. But when Roman soldiers found her in that final room, still straightening the crown on a dead queen's head, they saw loyalty. Maybe what they actually saw was the last act of a woman who had never once been free, and who spent her very last breath making sure her queen looked perfect.